All right, let's dive right in. Today, we're going to follow a single fat molecule on its incredible journey, all the way from your dinner plate, through the superhighways of your bloodstream, and right into the powerhouse of your cells. You know, for any medical student, getting a grip on lipid metabolism is absolutely fundamental. So, let's get into it.
It's a pretty simple question on the surface, isn't it? But the answer is this amazing biochemical saga. We're about to see how these molecules give us a massive amount of energy and even become key building blocks for our cells. Lipids are totally indispensable. So let's trace that path together, step by step.
So here's our roadmap. We'll start with how we digest fat. Then we'll follow it as it gets shipped around the body. We'll look at how we burn it for fuel, and then, super importantly, what happens when this whole system goes wrong. This is the complete story from start to finish.
Okay, first things first, digestion and absorption. Now, fats have this one big problem. They're hydrophobic. They just don't like water. And since our bodies are mostly water, that's a real challenge. But don't worry, we've got a pretty sophisticated system to break them down and get them into our circulation.
As you can see, it's a whole 5-step process. First, bile salts act kind of like dish soap, breaking up big fat blobs into tiny droplets. That's emulsification. Then, enzymes jump in and start chopping them up. These little pieces then get packaged into tiny water-friendly spheres called micelles, which can easily be absorbed by your intestinal cells. And once inside, the fats are put back together and packed into these bigger transport vehicles called chylomicrons, ready to hit the road.
So how do these fats, which hate water, travel through our very watery bloodstream? Well, they've got their own specialized taxi service, lipoproteins. These things are really clever. They're a mix of lipids and proteins, perfectly designed to transport fat through the blood.
This table is a super high-yield overview of the 4 major players. Take a look at the origins. Chylomicrons, they carry the fat you just ate from your food. But VLDL, that's very low-density lipoprotein, that one transports fat that your own liver made. Then you've got LDL, which delivers cholesterol out to your tissues, while HDL acts like a cleanup crew, bringing leftover cholesterol back to the liver. Just think of them as different delivery trucks, each with a very specific job and route.
You've definitely heard people talk about good and bad cholesterol. Well, this is what they mean. LDL gets the bad reputation because if you have too much of it, it can start dumping its cholesterol cargo in your artery walls. That leads to plaque buildup, which we call atherosclerosis. HDL, on the other hand, is the good guy. It's that cleanup crew doing something called reverse cholesterol transport, a real hero.
So once a fatty acid gets delivered to a cell, how does it actually get turned into energy? This incredible transformation happens deep inside the mitochondria in a process called beta-oxidation. And this, right here, is where the awesome power of fat as a fuel source is truly unleashed.
But wait, there's a catch. The inner membrane of the mitochondria is really picky about what it lets through, and it does not let long-chain fatty acids in. So they need a special escort, and that escort is the carnitine shuttle. It's a specialized system with enzymes acting like gatekeepers that get these fatty acids across the membrane, delivering the fuel right to the furnace.
Now, once inside the mitochondria, beta-oxidation happens in this repeating 4-step cycle. A fatty acid chain goes through oxidation, then hydration, then another oxidation, and finally it gets cleaved. With every single turn of this cycle, a 2-carbon unit, acetyl-CoA, is clipped right off. This just keeps repeating over and over until the entire fatty acid chain is taken apart.
And this is the payoff. This is why fat is such a powerhouse fuel. The complete breakdown of just one 16-carbon fatty acid molecule gives you a staggering 129 ATP molecules. Now, compare that to glucose, which gives you, around 32 ATP? This incredible efficiency is exactly why fat is our body's favorite way to store energy for the long haul.
Okay, so what happens when glucose just isn't available? Like during a long fast or in uncontrolled diabetes? Well, our body has a really clever backup plan. It starts making something called ketone bodies.
Ketone bodies are made in the liver from all that acetyl-CoA we just talked about, and because they're water-soluble, they can travel easily through the blood. What's truly amazing is that they can cross the blood-brain barrier and fuel the brain, which normally can't use fatty acids directly. This is a life-saving adaptation.
So far, we've talked all about breaking fat down. But what about building it up? When you eat more calories than you need, especially from carbs, your body cleverly converts that extra energy into fat and stores it for later. That process is called lipogenesis.
Now, if you're studying for an exam, you have to know the key enzyme. In fatty acid synthesis, the big one is acetyl-CoA carboxylase. It handles the very first committed step of the whole pathway. This makes it the main control point, and it's heavily regulated by hormones like insulin and glucagon.
Look, understanding these pathways isn't just about acing your biochemistry exam, it's absolutely essential for when you're on the wards. When lipid metabolism goes wrong, the consequences can be really severe. Let's look at a couple of classic examples.
Here's a clinical scenario you are absolutely going to see. A patient with uncontrolled diabetes comes in, and they have this distinct, almost fruity smell on their breath. So what's going on at the molecular level?
The culprit is acetone. In uncontrolled diabetes, the body can't use glucose, so it goes into overdrive breaking down fats. This leads to a massive overproduction of ketone bodies. One of them, acetone, is volatile, meaning it turns into a gas easily, so you literally breathe it out. That's what causes the smell, and it's a huge red flag for a life-threatening condition called diabetic ketoacidosis, or DKA.
And here's another really tragic consequence of a metabolic defect. A flaw in that beta-oxidation pathway we talked about, specifically a deficiency in an enzyme called MCAD, is behind a significant number of cases of sudden infant death syndrome. Essentially, when an infant's glucose runs low between feedings, their body can't switch over to burning fat for energy. It's heartbreaking.
Okay, we have covered a ton of ground. So let's just take a moment to pull back, recap the entire journey, and really nail down these key concepts for revision.
So here it is, the whole journey on one slide. It all starts with digestion and absorption. Then, our fleet of lipoproteins transports the fats around the body. Once they reach the cells, they're either burned for a huge amount of ATP or they're stored for later. In an emergency, the liver kicks in and makes ketone bodies. And, as we've seen, when any of these steps break down, you get serious clinical diseases.
And this all leads us to a final, really important question. Every single step we've talked about, from the carnitine shuttle to that key enzyme acetyl-CoA carboxylase, is a potential target for new drugs. As future doctors and researchers, understanding this intricate molecular machinery is your first step towards developing new ways to treat these huge metabolic diseases. This deep biochemical knowledge, this is the foundation for your entire future practice. Thanks for joining me.